She called it settling in. That was the phrase my daughter-in-law used the first time she rearranged my kitchen. Not "I hope you don't mind," or "would it be okay if," just settling in, as if the house had been waiting for her to arrive and finally put things where they belonged. I remember standing in the doorway watching her move my cast-iron skillet to a different cabinet, the one by the stove instead of the one above the counter where I had kept it for 31 years. I didn't say anything. She was smiling. My son Marcus was smiling. They had just moved in 2 weeks before, and I told myself that this was what you do. You make room. You adjust. You love your children, and you make room. My name is Dorothy. I am 67 years old. I own a 3-bedroom house in Savannah, Georgia, the same house I bought with my husband Raymond in 1991, the same house where I raised Marcus and his younger sister Celine, the same house where Raymond died in the back bedroom on a Tuesday morning in October 3 years ago, with the ceiling fan turning slowly above him and his hand in mine. After Raymond passed, the house felt large in a way it never had before. Not empty. I want to be clear about that. I was not lonely in the way people assumed. I had my routines. I had my garden. I had my church friends and my neighbor Harriet, who came over every Thursday for coffee and never once moved my cast-iron skillet. But the house was large, and Marcus called one evening in the spring and said that he and his wife Brianna were thinking about relocating from Charlotte, that the cost of living was getting difficult, that it would only be temporary, just until they saved enough to put a down payment on their own place. "It would be good for you too, Mom," he said. "You shouldn't be in that house alone." I want to tell you something about that sentence. I have thought about it many times since. You shouldn't be in that house alone. It sounds like concern. It is shaped exactly like concern. But somewhere inside it, if you press on it, there is something else, a suggestion that the house is too big for just me, that my being there alone is a problem to be solved, that I needed to be managed. I did not hear that part then. I heard my son's voice, and I said yes. Brianna was polite when they first arrived. She brought flowers, actually a bunch of yellow tulips that she set on the kitchen table, and said made the room look more cheerful. I thanked her. I showed her where things were. I told them both that I only had 2 rules. The back bedroom was mine, and I needed quiet before 8 in the morning because that was when I did my reading and my prayer. Marcus nodded. Brianna smiled and said, "Of course." Within a month, she had reorganized the linen closet. I found out because I went to get a spare pillowcase, and everything had been moved to different shelves. The towels were where the sheets used to be. The sheets were folded differently, in thirds instead of halves, stacked in a way I had never stacked them. I stood in front of that open closet for a long moment. Then I closed it, found the pillowcase on the new shelf, and went back to my room. I told myself it was a small thing. I told myself that a lot, over the months that followed. The kitchen drawer where I kept my scissors and tape, and the takeout menus reorganized. The living room furniture shifted, not dramatically, just a few inches here and there, enough that the room felt subtly different, like a song played in a slightly different key. The thermostat adjusted. Brianna ran cold, she said. She needed it warmer. I started wearing a cardigan in my own house in July. Still, I told myself these were small things. What I did not tell myself, what I did not let myself think too clearly, was that Marcus and Brianna had been with me for over 2 years by then, and the down payment fund had not come up in conversation once. I want to be honest with you about something, because I think it matters. I was not blameless in how things developed. I know that now. Every time I swallowed a small discomfort to keep the peace, I was teaching them something. I was teaching them that this was acceptable, that I could be moved and rearranged and adjusted like a piece of furniture, and I would smile and say nothing. I thought I was being gracious. I was actually being invisible, and there is a difference. The moment I remember most clearly The one I come back to happened on a Sunday evening in November. I had spent the afternoon making pot roast. It was Raymond's recipe, the one he had gotten from his mother, the one that required starting the night before with the marinade and then low heat for most of the day. The whole house had been smelling of it since morning. I was at the table, waiting for the roast to finish its last 30 minutes, reading the paper, a cup of tea in front of me. Brianna came downstairs with her laptop and set it on the kitchen table across from me. She opened it, put in her earbuds, and began a video call with someone, loud. The earbuds were in, but her microphone was not muted, and I could hear the other person clearly, laughing, talking about something that happened at work. I waited a few minutes. The kitchen was small. I could not read with the conversation happening 3 feet away from me. I lowered my paper and said gently, "Brianna, would you mind taking that call somewhere else? I'm just sitting here quietly and it's a little hard to concentrate." She looked up. Something moved across her face that I can only describe as annoyance, quick and unguarded. She said, "I'm just in the kitchen, Dorothy. Just in the kitchen." "My kitchen?" "I understand," I said. I was here first, and it's a little loud." She pulled out one earbud. "Marcus and I basically live here," she said. "This is our space, too." I did not answer. I folded my paper. I picked up my tea. I went to my bedroom and I sat on the edge of my bed and I looked at the wall. Our space, too. I sat with that for a long time. I did not cry. I want to tell you that, because I think sometimes people expect that the older woman weeping in her bedroom. I did not cry. I felt something colder than sadness. I felt a clarity beginning to form, the way ice forms on a window pane, slowly, at the edges first. I thought about Raymond. I thought about what he would have said. Raymond was a quiet man, but he had a particular stillness that he got when something was wrong, a quality of attention that meant he was measuring the situation carefully before he acted. He would have sat exactly where I was sitting. He would have been quiet for the same amount of time. And then he would have said, "Dorothy, what are you going to do about this?" Not in a way that meant I should confront Brianna, not in a way that meant drama or argument. Raymond never believed in that. He believed in paperwork. He used to say, half joking, that the most powerful thing a person could hold was a document with their name on it. He was a man who kept files. He kept files for everything. I thought about that. I got up and I went back to the kitchen and I served the pot roast for dinner and nobody said anything about what had happened, and I smiled and I passed the bread, and the whole time I was thinking. The next week, I called my attorney. Her name is Patricia, and I have known her for 15 years, since she helped Raymond and me refinance the house in 2009. I called her on a Wednesday morning while Marcus and Brianna were both at work. I sat in the kitchen, my kitchen, with the cast iron skillet in the wrong cabinet, and I told her everything, the 2.5 years. The no contribution to bills or groceries, the gradual rearranging, the hour space too. Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Dorothy, I need to ask you something directly. Do you want them to leave?" I had not let myself ask that question out loud before. It felt enormous when she said it. "Yes," I said. And then, more quietly, "Yes, I do." She walked me through everything. Because Marcus and Brianna had been living in the house for more than 30 days, significantly more, they had established what Georgia law considers a tenant relationship, regardless of whether any money had changed hands or any lease had been signed. That meant I could not simply ask them to leave and expect it to be over. It meant I had to do this correctly, through proper legal channels, with documentation and formal notice. I want to say something here for anyone who might be in a similar situation. I know it feels wrong to use legal language with your own child. I know it feels cold. I know it feels like something has failed, and maybe something has. But what Patricia said to me, when I expressed that hesitation, stayed with me. She said, "Dorothy, the law is not punishment. It's protection. You're not using it against Marcus. You're using it to protect what Raymond left you and what you have every right to keep." I wrote that down on a notepad after we hung up. I still have it. Over the next 3 weeks, I did what Patricia advised. I kept notes, dates, specific incidents, conversations I remembered as clearly as I could, not to be vindictive, because documentation is how you protect yourself. Because Raymond was right about paperwork, Patricia drafted the formal written notice, 60 days, as Georgia law required for the situation. I signed it. I did not tell Marcus and Brianna what was coming. I want to be honest about that part, too. There were nights when I wondered if I was doing the wrong thing. Marcus was my son. He was the boy who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long car trips, who called me from college, crying after his first bad breakup, who held my hand at his father's funeral without being asked. I loved him. I still loved him. That did not go away. But I also knew something I had been trying not to know for 2 years, that love without boundaries does not protect anyone. That I had allowed, quietly, month by month, small thing by small thing, for my own home to become somewhere I felt like a guest. And that Raymond had worked 30 years, and I had worked 30 years, and this house was the thing that was left, and I was the one responsible for it now. That knowing did not make it easy. It just made it necessary. The morning the process server came, I was not home. That was deliberate. Patricia had advised me that it was better for me not to be present, that it would reduce tension, and that legally my presence was not required. So I had told Marcus the evening before that I was going to spend a few days with my friend Gloria in Augusta, which was true. I had packed a small bag. I had kissed my son on the cheek in the way I always did, and told him I loved him, because I did, and I left. I was sitting on Gloria's back porch, drinking coffee when my phone rang. It was Marcus. I looked at the screen for a moment before I answered. I thought about Patricia's voice saying, "You don't have to justify yourself." I picked up. His voice was not what I expected. I had braced for anger. What I heard was something more bewildered, almost young-sounding, the way he used to sound as a boy when something happened that he couldn't make sense of. "Mom," he said, "there was a man here, with papers." "I know," I said. A silence. "This is Mom. This is an eviction notice." "It's a notice to vacate," I said. Patricia explained the difference to me. "It means I'm asking you and Brianna to make arrangements to move within 60 days. You're—" He stopped. I heard him breathe. "You're kicking us out." I had thought about how to answer that question. I had actually written out a few versions. In the end, I set them all aside and I just told him the truth. "Marcus," I said, "I love you. I have loved you every day of your life, and that is not going to change. But this is my house. It was your father's house. And for 2.5 years I have felt like a stranger in it, and I can't do that anymore." He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different, smaller. "I didn't know you felt that way." "I know," I said. "That's something we both have to sit with." I did not tell him about the Sunday in the kitchen. I did not list the reorganized closets, or the thermostat, or the cast-iron skillet. I did not need to. I think some part of him already knew. I think when you know, you know. You may not acknowledge it. You may let the person you love keep swallowing their discomfort for your convenience. But somewhere, at some level, you know. He asked if we could talk when I got back from Gloria's. I said yes. He asked if there was any way to work something out. I said I was open to a conversation. but that the 60 days would stand, and that whatever conversation we had needed to start from that truth, he said okay. He said he was sorry, Mom. I held that. It was not nothing. The 60 days were not simple. Brianna was angry in a way that Marcus was not more vocal about it, more pointed. There were 2 or 3 conversations I would not call pleasant. She felt blindsided. She felt I had gone behind their backs. I understood her feeling it that way, even if I disagreed. I had made a decision in my own home about my own home, and I had used the legal tools available to me to carry it out. I had not been theatrical. I had not been cruel. I had been methodical, the way Raymond would have been, and I would not apologize for that. Marcus and Brianna found an apartment in Savannah, actually not far, which was something I had not been sure how to feel about. But in the end, I decided that proximity was not the problem. The problem had been boundaries, or the absence of them. They moved out on a Saturday. I did not help with the packing. I thought that would have been strange for everyone, but I was home. Marcus carried things past me, and we were polite with each other in the way people are when they are not sure yet what they are to each other, when the old shape of the relationship has changed and the new shape hasn't fully formed. Before he carried the last box out, he stopped in the hallway. "I keep thinking about Dad," he said, about what he would say. "So do I said. He nodded. He picked up the box. He walked out. 3 weeks after they left, I moved the cast-iron skillet back to the cabinet above the counter. I know that sounds small, but I stood there after I did it, and I put my hand on the cabinet door, and I just stayed there for a minute. 31 years, that skillet lived in that cabinet. Raymond had hung that cabinet himself, measured it twice with a yellow tape measure he kept in the drawer by the fridge. I could still see him doing it. I made dinner that evening with the radio on at the volume I preferred, which is louder than most people expect from someone my age. I sat at the kitchen table and ate without hurry, and afterward I washed my dish and dried it and went to sit in the living room, in the chair I had moved back to where it always used to be, the one that faces the window that looks out onto the front yard. The garden needed tending. I had let it go a little during the difficult months. I made a list in my head of what I was going to plant in the spring. Marcus called a month later. Not about the house, just to talk. It was a different kind of call than the ones we had been having, less careful, less like 2 people navigating around something. He told me about the new apartment. He told me Brianna was doing well. He asked about the garden. It was not back to what it was before all of this. I want to be honest with you about that too. Something like this changes things. Not irreparably, I don't believe that, and I don't want to believe that. But it changes them. The relationship I have with my son now is one that has been tested and bent and has to rebuild itself. And rebuilding takes time, and it is not always comfortable, and that is the truth of it. What I can tell you is that when I got off the phone that evening, I did not feel the hollowness I used to feel after we spoke during those 2 years. There was something more solid underneath it, something that had been allowed to be real. I think about what I would say to someone in the position I was in 2 years ago, sitting in that kitchen, watching their own skillet move to a different cabinet for the first time. I would say this: the small things are not small. Every small thing you accept without a word is a vote for a reality you may not have agreed to, and it is never too late to stop voting for it. I would say you do not have to shout. You do not have to be unkind. You do not have to burn anything down. What you have to do is get very quiet and get very clear, and then act from that quiet and that clarity with all the patience and precision you can manage. I would say, get a good attorney. Keep good records. Know your rights. And I would say, Raymond was right about paperwork. The garden is doing well this spring. The tomatoes came in early. There are marigolds along the front walk that are a color I have no name for, somewhere between gold and copper, the exact color of late afternoon in October, which was always my favorite time of year in this house. I sit by the window in the evenings the way I always have. The chair is where it belongs. The volume on the radio is where I like it. I am home.